For my first year of training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the thing that I struggled with most was rolling aggressively. And like in lots of things in life, I think the things that you struggle with in Jiu-Jitsu often reflect the things that you struggle with most in life. And for me, acting aggressively in life is something that I've been really rubbish at for a lot of my life, and it's still something that I'm working to improve. But shifting my mindset to what Jocko Willink describes as default aggressive is something that's massively changed my life in a positive way. And I think it could do the same for you. So what is default aggressive? Well, I'll describe it first in the context of Jiu-Jitsu and then in other areas of life. So I'm in default aggressive mode and the match starts, and I'm going to impose my will on the match, on my opponent. So I say to myself, I'm going to set up the takedown and I'm going to take my opponent to the floor. Or I'm going to bait my opponent, and then when I create the opening, I'm going to pull guard. So maybe you go in with that mindset and you go for the takedown, but your opponent stuffs your takedown. And so you end up on the bottom. Well, you can still apply default aggressive in this mode, in this state of being on the bottom. So you can say to yourself, okay, I'm on the bottom, but I'm not going to let my opponent play his game. I'm not going to let him settle. So I'm going to break his posture. I'm going to set up my sweeps. I'm going to set up my submissions. And that's being default aggressive. That's not how I trained and rolled for most of the time that I've been training Jiu-Jitsu. For me, it looked more like, well, okay, we're starting the match. I'm going to see what my opponent does. If he leaves his legs open, then maybe I'll go for the takedown. And if not, then I'm just going to stand around. And if he goes to take me down, then maybe I'll flop into guard. And what's the problem with that? So in my first year of training, I got very used to being on bottom and getting smashed, which I think is quite normal when you start Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But the problem is that I got used to only reacting to what my opponent was doing and defending against that. In Jiu-Jitsu, if you don't impose your will on your opponent, then you won't win. If I let my opponent impose his will on me and I'm only reacting to that, then my best and worst case will be defined by my opponent, not by me. And the same is true for life. If you live life just reacting to circumstances, waiting for the right job opening to appear, waiting to meet the right person, just going with the flow, then you're not going to win. And by that, I don't mean beating other people. I don't think it's helpful to view life competitively in that way. But what I mean is, whatever your purpose is, you'll do much better if you aggressively seek out opportunities and take them. So for me, my purpose is to help other people to improve their own lives. And I'm trying to create as many opportunities as possible for myself to do that with this default aggressive mindset. Before we go any further, I think it's helpful to unpack our associations with the word aggression. Because I know for me, I definitely viewed aggression as a bad thing for most of my life. What do you associate with the word aggression? For me, when I thought of aggression, I usually thought about being on a night out and someone's acting aggressively by starting a fight with someone. That's what I thought of when I heard the word aggression. I thought about it's someone harming someone. But default aggression in that situation could be you're on a night out and you see someone causing trouble and you act aggressively to de-escalate the situation, to calm the person down and stop people from getting hurt. Or you can be default aggressive by aggressively acting to remove yourself from the situation. Aggression isn't inherently good or bad. Aggression can be used for positive purposes or for negative purposes. Aggression can be used to help people or to harm people. I think another helpful distinction to make is that when we want to be default aggressive, we want to act default aggressively towards situations, not towards people. And when that's the case, then default aggression can be something that's incredibly helpful for our lives. So when I first heard of this concept of being default aggressive, I thought to myself, isn't this just the same as proactivity? But there's a bit of a difference between aggression and proactivity, isn't there? Well, what is the difference between being aggressive and being proactive? To me, I think it comes down to aggression is proactivity with tenacity. So when you're aggressive, you're being proactive, but there's this extra sense of desire and urgency that separates it from just normal proactivity. And so proactivity is great, and aggression is just an expression of proactivity that can be helpful to tap into. And so being default aggressive means that your default mode of approaching anything in life is being proactive with this extra tenacity. The final thing to consider is this question of, does being default aggressive prevent you from being relaxed and enjoying life? Which I think is a really good question. And Jocko answers this question himself, so I'll put a link in the description to his response if you want to have a listen to that. But here's my take on the whole thing. You can be aggressive without constantly straining. You can be proactive without constantly straining. And I think it's really important to recognize that in some situations, being default aggressive can actually help you to relax even more. Because when you're constantly being proactive and thinking ahead and acting ahead, then it's rare that you'll be caught in situations where you're panicking to catch up with things because you haven't prepared for things. Jocko gives this example and he says that if you're a boss and you're shouting at your employees, then you've already messed up. Whereas if you're a boss who's in default aggressive mode, then you'll act ahead to make sure that your employees are on board with your mission, that they know what they're doing. And when that's the case, it's very rare that you'll have to shout at them because they're not doing the right thing or because they misunderstood you. So that's how default aggression can help you to be more relaxed and work in a relaxed environment. For myself, one thing that I like to do is first thing in the morning, I spend 1 hour doing the most important, meaningful, and impactful work. It's what some people like to call eat the frog. And this really helps me to relax even more in the rest of my day because I know that no matter what happens in the rest of my day, I've already made an impact on this day from the hour of work that I've done in the morning. And that helps me to, just relax and enjoy myself a bit more later in the day. The opposite of this is, let's say you leave your work till later in the day. I don't think you can easily relax or fully relax, and you'll probably feel a bit uneasy because you know that you still got to eat the frog later in the day. So that's another example of how default aggressive can help you to live in a more relaxed way. So that's default aggression. It's massively improved my jiu-jitsu game and the rest of my life. If you want to find out more, I'll put a link to Jocko Willink stuff down below. But first, I want you to ask yourself, how would your life be different if you adopted the default aggressive mindset?